All right, today we are going to crack open one of the most influential business studies ever done. Jim Collins's Good to Great. For 5 years, Collins and his team just dug and dug, trying to answer one simple but incredibly profound question. Why is it that some companies, after decades of just being fine, suddenly blast off and achieve these amazing lasting results, while their competitors, who have the same resources, the same opportunities, just kind of stay stuck? It's a huge question. So let's get into it. Okay, look at Walgreens. For over 40 years, this was a totally average company. Its stock just sort of followed the market, nothing special. Then, bam, 1975. Something clicks. If you'd invested in Walgreens then, you would have absolutely crushed the market. We're talking returns 15 times greater. This chart right here, this captures the whole point of the study. It wasn't a slow crawl. It was a leap. So, what happened? Was it some genius celebrity CEO, a crazy new invention, some brilliant strategy session? Well, the research team found that, actually, it was none of those things. The answer, they said, lies inside what they called the black box, a set of timeless principles that, when you put them together, systematically create greatness. So, let's open this thing up. The very first thing they found was a total surprise. The leaders who pulled off these transformations didn't start with a big vision or a new strategy. Nope. They started by getting the right people on the team and, just as important, getting the wrong people off. They started with who before they even thought about what. And at the very top, they found a very different kind of leader. They called them Level 5 leaders. And these folks are a fascinating paradox. They weren't the big, flashy celebrity CEOs you see on magazine covers. They were humble, shy, sometimes even a little awkward. But hiding under that quiet exterior was an absolute, unstoppable, ironclad will to win. I mean, listen to this. Take Darwin Smith, the CEO who turned Kimberly-Clark around. He was a humble farm boy. As a young man, he actually lost part of his finger at work and just went to his night class that same evening. Then, 2 months after becoming CEO, he gets diagnosed with throat cancer and is told he has less than a year to live. He told the board, of course, but then just kept his insane work schedule while commuting for radiation treatments, and he ended up leading the company for another 25 years. Now that is professional will. And this really gets at a huge difference in how these leaders think. When things were going great, Level 5 leaders would look out the window to give credit to their team or to luck or to anything but themselves. But when things went badly, they looked right in the mirror and took 100% of the responsibility. The leaders of the so-so companies did the exact opposite. They'd look in the mirror to take all the credit and point out the window to lay all the blame. This people-first idea is perfectly captured in the famous bus analogy. The good to great leaders were just relentless about getting the right people on the bus and into the right seats. Only after that was settled did they even bother to figure out where to drive the bus. Circuit City was so obsessed with this that their banners didn't say stuff like, "Big holiday sale." They literally read, "Always looking for great people." Okay, so you've got your disciplined people on board. Now, how do you figure out where the heck to drive this bus? That takes us to the next big idea, disciplined thought. And this isn't about some dreamy vision quest. It's about confronting the cold, hard, brutal facts of your reality. This whole mindset is just perfectly summed up by something called the Stockdale Paradox. It's named after Admiral Jim Stockdale, who was a prisoner of war in Vietnam for 8 years. It's this powerful duality. You have to have absolute, unwavering faith that you will come out on top in the end, but at the very same time, you have to have the discipline to confront the most brutal, awful facts of your current situation. When Stockdale was asked who were the ones who didn't make it out of the camps, his answer is, "Man, it's just chilling." He said it wasn't the pessimists, it was the optimists, the ones who kept saying, "Don't worry, we'll be out by Christmas." And then Christmas would come and go, and they were just crushed. They mistook blind optimism for faith, refused to face reality, and, as he said, they died of a broken heart. You can see this paradox play out in business all the time. Back in the 70s, Kroger confronted the brutal fact that the old-school grocery store was basically dying, so they totally committed to reinventing themselves, building the modern superstore we know today. Meanwhile, their biggest rival, A&P, just clung to the past. Their leadership's guiding question was literally, what would Mr. Hartford do, their long-dead founder? They refused to face reality, and the company just collapsed. See, when you confront those brutal facts, you start to get incredible clarity. And this is where this ancient Greek parable of the hedgehog and the fox comes into play. The fox is clever, right? He's always trying a million different tricky strategies to get the hedgehog. But the hedgehog always wins because it knows how to do one big thing perfectly, roll itself into a spiky, impenetrable ball. The good to great companies found their one big thing, their hedgehog concept, by looking at where three simple circles overlap. First, what are you genuinely, deeply passionate about? Second, what can you be the absolute best in the world at? And they mean that literally, not just good, but the best. And third, what's the one key metric that drives your whole economic engine? Greatness is found right in that sweet spot where those three circles come together. All right, so you've got disciplined people, you have disciplined thought. The last piece of the puzzle is disciplined action. This is where that crystal clear simplicity of your hedgehog concept gets translated into consistent, relentless, day in, day out execution. Now, a culture of discipline might sound awful, right? Like rules and micromanagement. But it's actually the complete opposite. It's all about creating a framework where people have freedom and responsibility. See, when you have self-disciplined people who are all in on a shared goal, you don't need a bunch of bureaucratic layers to keep them on track. This kind of fanatical discipline can show up in the smallest ways. The study tells this great story about the triathlete Dave Scott. Here's a guy who burned thousands and thousands of calories a day, but he would still take the time to rinse his cottage cheese just to get rid of a tiny bit of extra fat. That one small act, piled on top of thousands of other small acts, is what creates an unbeatable program of excellence. That's the mentality. And this brings us to a really important point about technology. The good to great companies didn't look to technology to save them or create their transformation. They were often pioneers in using it, but only after they were already clear on their hedgehog concept. For them, technology was an accelerator for momentum they had already built. It can't make a mediocre company great. So, this final concept is where everything we've talked about, the people, the thought, the action, all comes together. It's how all these disciplines create this incredible, self-reinforcing cycle of unstoppable momentum. Imagine you're trying to push a giant, heavy metal flywheel. That first push, it takes a massive effort, and the wheel barely budges. But you don't stop. You keep pushing in the same direction. 2 turns, 5 turns, 10, 100 turns. Each push adds to the momentum until, finally, you hit a breakthrough. The wheel's own weight starts to work for you, and it just starts flying forward on its own. This image just perfectly shows the difference between the great companies and the others. The great ones lived by the flywheel, slow, deliberate, consistent pushes, day after day. The others, they were stuck in what Collins called the doom loop, lurching from one new program to the next, reacting without understanding, getting disappointing results, and never, ever building any real momentum. So from the outside, that breakthrough moment looks like some dramatic, overnight revolution. But from the inside, it never felt like that. Not once. To the people doing the work, it just felt like an evolution. Collins uses the analogy of an egg. To us, a chicken just suddenly appears. But to the chicken, cracking through that shell is just one more step in a long, slow, organic process of development. There was no single miracle moment. And really, when you boil it all down, the research lends on this one powerful idea. Most companies never become great simply because it is so much easier to be good. But this isn't just a business problem, right? This is a human problem. It's a challenge for any of us who want to build something that truly lasts and truly matters. You know, the good to great companies were just as famous for their stop doing lists as they were for their to-do lists. So as we wrap up, let me just leave you with this question. In your own work, in your own life, what's one thing you could stop doing today? One distraction you could unplug to start putting all that energy toward turning your own flywheel.